What are some ridiculous history facts? During the Viking era, there was a leader named Sigurd. He allied with a Viking warlord named Thorstein. He wanted to conquer more land and expand his territory. He had already been very successful in doing so. This was until he feuded with another leader called Buck-toothed or Tusk, as his front two teeth were abnormally large and buck-toothed. They decided to settle their matters on the battlefield and both agreed on bringing 40 men each for the battle. However, Sigurd ignored the terms and brought 80 men. Buck-toothed had realized he had been betrayed but did not give up. They killed a number of Sigurd's men, but alas, they were overpowered and were all killed. Here's the catch: after the battle, Sigurd ordered his men to behead all the enemies and tie them to their saddles as trophies. However, as Sigurd rode home in victory, the severed head of Buck-toothed pierced his leg, which led to an infection, killing him soon after. General Omar Bradley was stopped by MP during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II due to them thinking he was a Nazi infiltrator. The irony was that he was stopped because he correctly identified the capital of Illinois as Springfield when the officer thought it was Chicago. I've met plenty of people who thought Chicago was the capital of Illinois just because it's our most populated city. They also asked him baseball facts multiple times. Once he got one wrong, and was detained for a few hours. In ancient Egypt, servants were smeared with honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. That's so dumb, why not just put the honey on a statue or something? There used to be bread stamps, burned into a cooked loaf of bread, to avoid bread fraud, as the government supplied the wheat/flour, but some bakers tried to use sawdust and other ingredients in the bread to make the wheat last longer. The bread stamps were baker-specific, so they could track down where any tainted bread came from. If they were caught, they had to move to another town to make bread, or wait 3 years to continue making bread if I remember correctly. Bread laws were huge throughout most of history. Nowadays, the idea of the government so strictly regulating an industry that they are forced to sell at a certain price seems odd, but in a time when food shortages were always a danger and food reserves were slim, bread becomes a very important commodity. It's how the Roman emperors kept Rome quiet despite the fact it was such an absurdly huge city, literally bread and circuses. Free bread, free water, and free entertainment. During the Cold War, there was an idea to drop XL condoms labeled medium onto the Soviets to make them think we were anatomically superior and be more afraid of fighting us. Easily my favorite part of American history. Whoops, I dropped my monster condom for my Magnum dong. They were the only ones who could use them, so it was considered a gift more than a taunt. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of them both signing the Declaration of Independence. Adams's last words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives. He was wrong by about 5 hours." At one time there was not only a pope and an anti-pope but also a counter-anti-pope. If a pope and an anti-pope meet, do they annihilate each other? There still is an anti-pope in a sense today. The Palmarian Catholic Church split from the main one in the 70s and claim their pope is the real pope. They also see Hitler as a saint, so they are not the most sane bunch. Colombia has a period in history literally called the dumb homeland period because of how incredibly dumb politicians acted at the time. How long ago? Ancient Greek and Roman marble statues were actually originally painted and were colorful. A lot of the statues' paint faded away and went away over time. Some people cleaned off the paint thinking it was debris or dirt. And other people just plain cleaned and removed all of the paint off of them because they preferred the look of white marble. Rome was actually a very colorful city and it wasn't all made of just boring plain white marble. I'm taking a course in classical archaeology and it's almost painful to sit through my professor discuss what the early archaeologists did. And worst of all, incidents like in the 1930s when a crew at the British Museum set to work cleaning the Elgin marbles with copper chisels and carbide abrasives to get all the dirt off. When the Romans laid siege to Themyscira, a real place weirdly enough, they attempted to tunnel into the city. The Themyscirans released bears into the tunnels. Thus Tunnel Bear was invented. Themyscira burnt that Wonder Woman's hometown. Herostratus is the guy who burned down the temple of Artemis. The only reason he did it was to have his name written down in history. A law was also passed that made it illegal to write down his name for just that reason. Obviously, it is not enforced in modern times. Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Todd Lincoln, was present at 3 different presidential assassinations. After McKinley, he decided not to accept any more invitations. The battle for Castle Itter, a castle in Austria where the Wehrmacht and Americans fought side by side with French powers against the SS. Seriously, someone should make a movie about this. Geographics has a fantastic video on it. Edit, u/Tactical Toast 7 wrote a much more in-depth explanation of the story. Go check it out. It's the American troops and German army fighting together at last. Excellent book written about it, but you keep having the feeling that just by taking the tiniest of liberties, it could be the greatest war movie of all time. As Saint Lawrence was roasted to death on a gridiron, he is said to have remarked to his torturers, "I am cooked on this side, turn me over." Saint Lawrence is the patron saint of cooks and comedians. The first comedy roast. I bet Jeff Ross was there. Saint Lawrence and a river I grew up on. Seriously polluted. Makes sense now. The Battle of Bull Run, during the American Civil War, was called the Picnic Battle, because so many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started, and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. Fucking tourist. It also happened at the Battle of Watling Street in the year 61. The Iceni were so confident they would defeat the Romans, they gathered round in their wagons to watch. When they were routed and had to fall back, the wagons blocked their path, and that's how Boadicea was defeated. Karl Marx's great-great-grandson has a YouTube video of him doing parkour, called exclamation marks. I watched it and it's not actually bad or anything. Just funny considering his lineage. The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the British during World War II claimed no human casualties. But it did kill an elephant. Never forget. There were 9 elephanta in Berlin Zoo at the start of World War II. At the end of the war, there was only one left, its name was Siam. Edit, didn't expect this to blow up. I've decided not to amend my typo u/Pantelwolf. Edit 2, the pun was intentional smile. Loved reading your replies. Claudius Drusus died in AD 20 from asphyxiation when he tossed a pear in the air and caught it in his mouth. The pear tree was put on trial, found guilty of murder, and destroyed. 2 important questions: how large was this man's throat? How small was this bear? The British once sent a guy to China as a spy so he would uncover the secrets of making tea. The British did as they pleased back in the day. Before Abraham Lincoln became a politician, he was a champion wrestler. With more than 300 bouts under his belt, Lincoln only lost 1 match in his career and was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1992. He also jumped out of a window in order to prevent a quorum. I heard he actually hunted vampires and only became president of the US to stop them. The shortest war occurred between Zanzibar and the British Empire, lasting around 45 minutes. Both the British and the Zanzibar Sultanate fielded a couple thousand men with a few boats, however the war ended with a single Brit wounded. Meanwhile the Zanzibarians suffered 500 dead or wounded, including civilians, and their entire navy, a yacht, 2 boats and a shore battery, gone. And that's when legendary Freddie Mercury moved out of Zanzibar and fled to England. In 1967 Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt disappeared while swimming in the ocean. He was presumed drowned, so naturally that year we named a swim center after him in memoriam. Edit, added his name, which I meant to do when I wrote the post, but obviously my brain snapped midway through the sentence and I forgot it. Harold Holt. It should be added that he was a keen outdoorsman and a spear fisherman. He was a very good swimmer and would often swim out deep at the beach. The day of his disappearance there was others with him, but only one other swimmer who felt an undertow and decided it was too dangerous to go out. Holt swam out and was reported to have appeared as though he was caught in an undertow but didn't struggle or wave for help. Then he just disappeared into the surf. There are lots of conspiracies about what actually happened to him, but nothing concrete ever has been found. He just disappeared forever. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.